I'm Fred McMurray, which means this must be...
Pillars of franchising. Pillars of franchising.
I'm Fred McMurray, which means this must be...
Pillars.
I'm Fred McMurray, which means this must be...
Pillars.
We at the Pillars of Franchising team would like to express our gratitude to FeedSpot for listing us as number one in their 2023 list of top 50 franchising podcasts that you should listen to. Thank you from everyone here at Pillars of Franchising.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of Pillars of Franchising. It looks like, Fred, are you up on the screen with us now?
Yes.
Oh, what do we have going on today to get you on screen with us?
It's a very, very special day because we have to wish one of our team members happy birthday because they're going to be an old 27 Friday. Okay, maybe not 27. But
plus 11.
I wasn't going to say anything because I learned a long time ago, no woman ever hits you for underestimating their age. So, happy birthday! Should we sing?
No, but happy birthday, Sarah.
Thank you.
I will spare you from all of us and singing. You wouldn't enjoy it. It's not pretty.
You took my fun away, but okay, that's fine.
So we've got a great...
I'm going to mute.
Good idea. So we've got a great episode for you today. We are talking with Scott Marr of Empower Brands, and you may have remembered that we spoke with him back in February, but there's been big change with Wallaby and Koala. So we're going to talk to him.
Recording in progress.
And first, let's get started with some word on the street. Sarah?
All right. So I kind of want to talk about culture. So with your individual business, with looking to get a franchise, when I'm going to go buy a franchise, I'm going to look at numbers, how the business is doing. Do I like the employees? But I think a big part of it, being happy with working in a company, is what the culture is like. Can you kind of tell me what things I should be looking for, like the main things to look for in regards to culture when buying a franchise?
Sure. I mean, some of the big things in most of this, you'll find a couple different points, right? When you talk to the franchisor, you'll get a really good feel for what the home office culture is about. And I think that's really important because those are your support people. And you should feel a sense of warmth, a sense of team. They should, hopefully they're telling you how they're just a phone call away, they're super engaged and they're willing to come out to the field to help you. Those are good signs that they really want the franchisee to succeed. Now, can people say that and not deliver? Sure they can, but typically you don't find that. But the biggest place that I would also look to, probably more so than anything, is the fellow franchisees. So when you are doing your validation calls, it's really important that you ask those questions. Tell me what your environment's like. How often do you meet with other franchisees? What kinds of things do you talk about? Do you all feel like you're kind of a part of the same company, the same family? Like for me right away, they said, oh my gosh, we're like a big family. We hang out on vacations, even if it's not for the convention. And there were a lot of relationships that were formed. They knew who was having a baby, who may have just lost someone in their family. It's a very tight knit. And when you called to validate, they'd say, oh, did you talk to Tom? He's a great validator, right? He's got all kinds of stories for you. And when you start to feel that warmth and connection with people, I think that's when it's really important. Remember, though, back a while ago, we talked about the difference in the type of company that you're looking to join, right? So you have the corporate culture, and then you have more of a family, warm and fuzzy culture. And so depending on what type of company you're interviewing to invest in or what brand you want to buy, it's important to understand if that buttoned up culture is what you're really looking for, if you really want to go with something that's a little more family friendly, loose environment, things of that nature.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And just kind of seeing how they talk about each other.
Yeah, I mean,
it's kind of like how you talked about your old boss. Are you complaining about them, or are you?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think, and again, we always say that you're in franchising. Let me see how it goes. For yourself, but not by yourself, right? And even though that phrase has been overused the last couple of years, it's very, very true. And I will also say that one of the questions I like to ask when I'm validating with a franchise owner is, can you tell me about your employees? So what kind of employees do I need to be prepared to hire? And what kind of turnover do you have? And what are some of the reasons that they leave? Right? Because some people leave because they really don't like the work, and some people leave because they really don't like their boss. And so I think it's interesting to ask about turnover and ask the different various owners that you talk to. So what do you find your turnover to be like? And often based on the conversation you have with them in the validation process, when you get to that turnover question, you can guess right away who has high turnover because they don't like their boss.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
that all makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are 3 good places to start.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And as I mentioned today, we'd like to welcome back Scott Marr. Hi, Scott.
Hey, how's it going, Kristin?
Good. And on with me today is the lovely Laura Liss, our legal pro and franchise lawyer. How are you, Laura?
So good. How are you?
Awesome. Awesome. I'm so excited to have Scott on today. As I mentioned, there's been big changes, Scott, with Wallaby Windows and Koala Insulation since February. Would you like to tell us what's been going on over there?
Yeah. So, as mentioned on the last time I was on, we had, Koala's grown rapidly, and Koala has grown rapidly, and Wallaby is following right in its footsteps. And we're really starting to expand across the country. And we've been working with Empower Brands now for going on probably 14 or 15 months, and just kind of in the background, getting to know the folks over there. And we officially announced our transaction where we merged Koala Insulation and Wallaby Windows under the Empower Brands portfolio. So really exciting, and feel like that we ended in a really good spot with a great partner.
That's awesome. When did you finally seal that deal?
Last month in April.
Awesome. Good. Well, congratulations to you. And I'm so excited that you are the guy we got to interview today, not only because we already have a rapport with you, but I want to talk a little bit about that transition, not only for you as a founder and CEO, franchisor, but for the people like me who are franchisees and some of the transition that they go through when a company, in your case, it's a merger, right?
Correct.
And can you explain a little bit to our audience the difference between being a merger versus being maybe bought out and brought into a umbrella company, as we're calling them?
Yeah, great question. It's technically speaking, it's from a legal standpoint, it's very similar. But from that side of things, it's not a whole lot different. But for what it means for the folks in the organization, both the franchise partners and the team members at the head office, it can mean a great deal different or feel a great deal difference to those folks. The main difference there is that we didn't just sell the brands and plan to walk away from the business after 2 or 3 months or whatever the transition period look like.
Sure.
In this instance, I'm not planning to go anywhere from Empower Brands. I'm a shareholder of Empower Brands. I serve as the Chief Incubation Officer for Empower Brands now, so I'm on the senior leadership team.
Awesome.
And so really what it means is we're still going to be able to support our franchise partners and our team members that means that both of those, both of those groups of folks are going to have opportunities to continue to grow and scale. So, so that's probably the biggest difference, between the two.
Did you have any concerns at all from your franchisees about what this would mean and what this looks like for them now that the brand has, I'll call it, evolved, sort of?
Yeah, I think naturally, people have had bad experiences in the past with mergers and acquisitions. And so, just understanding that the team that they became accustomed to working with is still going to be supporting them. And myself as the founder and really the brand innovator behind both of these brands is not going anywhere. I think that's probably the biggest thing that we wanted to focus on with our franchise partners. So,
yeah, I think it's one of the questions I wanted to touch on because, franchisees get accustomed to, whomever in the franchisor they go to for support, right? They know that they have a good relationship, with Linda or whomever, and they want to talk, and then sometimes when franchise brands, join with others, right? There is synergy. There is a cost savings, which is not bad, but sometimes we don't always get to keep Linda. So it is great to hear that you guys are keeping your team in place.
Yeah. And that's really one of the main reasons why I specifically wanted to work with Empower. We had many opportunities to partner with other groups, but Empower's young. They're entrepreneurial. They're in growth mode. And, as such, they're not looking at, cutting cost. They're looking at how can we, if you already have great people in the organization, yes, there is a shared services division that does a whole plethora of services for the franchise partners. Maybe if we don't need Linda in accounting anymore, specifically for Koala, how can Linda be leveraged in the broader organization? Whereas with some of the older, more mature aggregators, perhaps they don't need that extra seat, and so costs become a bigger focus after the acquisition's done and the dust is settled, so to speak.
Yeah, I think we see that with the private equity acquisitions in particular. But what were you going to say, Kristin?
Well, and that's kind of, I was going to ask him, because there is a lot of private equity playing the game out there right now. And I'm sure a lot of people approached you about merging or being acquired. What made you decide that you needed to do that? Why didn't you just keep on keeping on?
Yeah, that's I could talk on that single point probably for a few hours, but
okay, we'll say the top two reasons.
Yeah, well, the biggest reason is I believe in the brands that we've built, but as an entrepreneur, as a founder, so much of my personal net worth and income was derived from the business. And one really follows the other. Mm-hmm. And so obviously the more income a brand generates, then the more enterprise value it has. And when I started Koala and I set out to become one of the largest insulation contractors in the country, I had a number in mind, and I said, whenever we hit that number, I'm gonna roll on. Well, ultimately we doubled that number, and I just said, okay, I don't want to be greedy here, because the old saying of, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. And so I just felt like, even though I believed in the brands, I just felt like that, there was a really good opportunity for us, me personally and my family, but also our franchise partners, right? So I've grown brands to a good size and scale. And that's really what I've done in my career is build brands, I felt like we were starting to hit a point where I was having a lot of questions about where do we go from here?
Yeah.
What does franchise support look like at a system with, 100 plus franchise partners, and still growing rapidly?
Sure.
And I just felt like there was some opportunity there for us to provide, better support. And so ultimately I just recognized that, putting our franchisees first and saying, maybe there's a better path.
Well, what was the one thing that Empower had or did that made you choose them instead of all the others out there? Aside from money, I'm sure that played into it as well, but what would be the one driving factor if you had to say?
Yeah. So I'll touch on just money just very, very briefly. So Empower, they didn't have the highest offer, so to speak. But what I saw in Empower longer term was just so much better. Felt like that there would be a home for me on the team. Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying before is what Empower has is they're young, they're entrepreneurial, and they're growing. They have a very large shared services support division, and some of the brands in the platform are 20 and 30 years old. So there's a lot of knowledge there that is well beyond my years. So I think the biggest thing was just the shared services and the support that they offer their franchisees.
I might jump in and say that ties nicely to our prior word on the street topic. It sounds a lot like culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are your franchisees doing in this? And I know that obviously you're going to, kind of paint it from your point of view, and that's what you have to do. But some of their own word on the street or the chit chat, what are you hearing from your franchisees? Do they feel like this is a smooth transition and good for them, or are they still in that learning curve trying to see the huge benefits that will eventually come?
Yeah, really. So one of the things that I appreciate about the transition so far with Empower is they've not wanted to change anything like on their own. They're coming to us, and saying, hey, where do you feel like you need help? Where do you need support? And then that's where they're ultimately plugging themselves in and supporting us. So it's been really, from that standpoint, at least, it's been really great. Been through another, acquisition, merger, situation where that wasn't the case, and things just got changed for the sake of change, and because it's how it's always been done.
Yes.
There's been some things change, right? Bank accounts have changed, payroll service providers have changed because it has to, because there's there's one, system in place. That's all the easy stuff. It's the stuff that's really impactful and impactful to the franchise partners and the daily operations of their business that cause me the angst. And that hasn't,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say that, and that just hasn't been the case with Empower. So I appreciate that a lot.
So Laura, I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, oh my gosh, what if I buy into this brand and they have a merger or acquisition? What happens to all the agreements that I signed? What happens to my fees? Can you talk a little bit on the legal perspective? What happens when a franchisee goes through this?
Yeah, because it is fairly common, right? Most people who start businesses, especially if you're looking at buying a business that is, the franchise is still run by the founder. Something to have in the back of your mind is that founder is eventually going to want to think about an exit strategy, right? It doesn't mean that they have to be, more senior, like Scott is, still going to stay with the brand, but he wanted an exit strategy, right?
Sure.
So, the contract itself will stay in place, right? There is no need to have anything change with the contract. That being said, in this situation where Scott is describing, it sounds like everything has pretty much stayed status quo, right, for the franchisees. In some situations, right, there can be things where, you know, the franchise agreement may have had language in it, right, that permitted the franchisor to do things that it wasn't currently doing.
Yeah.
It had not imposed certain fees, but it always had the right to. It had not, you know, forced people to, you know, do remodeling. But, you know, now that we have a new owner in place, you know, new franchisor owner, we're going to exercise that. So, you know, those are things that can happen, right? It's still the same contract, but, you know, if someone's reading it with a different pair of glasses, it may not be quite as rosy. So that's something to think about, you know, and if it is a different type, you know, different type of acquisition, right? There can be ones where one franchisor actually buys another one, and then all the franchisees of the target brand, they have to go and rebrand, right? So if you used to be, you know, whatever brand, you know, you were, you know, ABC Restaurant or ABC Roofing, you are now XYZ Roofing, and those costs to rebrand, like, you know, buying new signage, rewrapping your vehicles, redoing your marketing materials, anything that has the brand on it, right, that you paid for whatever in the past.
Yep.
Now you have to go ahead and transition that. You know, and the better franchisors, when, you know, they're doing that, if that's happening to their franchisees, they will try to usually negotiate something that's like a credit for the franchisees to have some kind of, you know, at least something that, you know, they don't have to pay all of it, right?
Yeah.
It's not their fault. They're just
and some of those changes are costly. I mean, you talk about car wraps, right? And I have a fleet of 15 cars, and then all of a sudden, and we've, since our acquisitions, 2 of them, every acquisition comes with 1 or 2 new revised sets of logos. And I'm like, listen, that's like $1,500 a car.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't budget that. And so, and that's just a tip of some of the things that can change.
Exactly. And that's, you know, imagine if you had a business that not only had all the vehicles, right, but you also had exterior signage, which can easily be, you know, $8,000, $10,000 for multiple signs. So, you know, it can be a significant expense. I mean, I can remember, and it's not in the context of an acquisition, but I can remember when, you know, KFC went from all their signs literally just saying the letters KFC. To they decided that they were going to really put on their signs, you know, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Okay.
Yeah.
And all the franchisees had to go and buy new signs. You know, this was expensive. And then, I don't know, probably like 5 years later, they were like, you know, KFC was actually really good. We're going to go back to that. And that was very frustrating for their franchisees because they're stuck in the middle. And that's not a criticism, right? You know, the brand has to evolve. They have to do, you know, they have to try new things. Right. It's not like always a bad thing, but, you know, it's the one, you know, you're getting the same agreement if there is some kind of acquisition of your franchisor, but there still may be things that flow down that change.
Yeah. Scott, for you, what, you know, obviously I would think, are your franchisees going to benefit greatly in some technologies and things of that matter that the other brands under Empower have?
Yeah, good question. I don't think from that standpoint, I don't think like technology is on the table to be changed. We have and had really from the inception, really wonderful technology at Koala and Wallaby.
Awesome.
So in some respects, some of our technology is actually going to be used in other Empower brands.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
So we're excited about that. But one of the things you were mentioning, Laura, a moment ago is really, you know, that was one of the things that I did some due diligence on Empower when I was going through the process. It was very much a mutual. When you have options, and thankfully I had options. When you have options, you can do some reverse due diligence, and so I did that. And you know, I said, hey, you know, have you guys ever, you know, raised royalty fees on any of your brands post acquisition? No, never, not one. It hasn't even been contemplated.
Nice.
You know, that sort of thing was really important to me to understand, you know, the culture of Empower. I also did some investigation. Tell me about your lawsuits. What lawsuits do you have? Both, pending, threatened, or active. And I was very pleased to see under the hood, so to speak. So I did a lot of due diligence. I had a list probably of about 25 items that I kind of went through and ticked off the box. So that was something that was just super important.
Yeah, because in your position, right, it's a little different from, what our audience would be in, but you're not, in that transaction, you are not only a seller, but you're also a buyer because you took equity in their company.
Correct.
You may have gotten some kind of cash. We don't have to talk about that, but you took a stake in their company you're buying. So you need to know what their litigation is. You need to know all of these things because it's what those are now risks to your assets. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about, you had a growth strategy before the merger. Now you've got this big merger. What does your growth strategy look like for the next 5 or 10 years for your brands?
Yeah. So I took a role, an interesting role. So I mentioned it on this call already. The Chief Incubation Officer role. It's probably a title that most people have never heard of before. But it's really what I've done, my entire career to this point is incubating and building brands. And so I get to do that for Empowered now, and continue to do what I enjoy most as an entrepreneur. And that is, build new concepts out and see through, just a vision to reality into a working system. So, I'm still going to be involved with both Koala and Wallaby for some time, and they'll always be near and dear to me, of course, because I birthed them, so to speak. But we're in the process of putting a brand president in place, and we're going to continue on. So Koala still has a ton of white space available for new territory development. Wallaby has even substantially more. We're pushing forward with national accounts programs for both Koala and Wallaby, and we're gaining some substantial momentum with that. So franchise partners are still going to grow their business, their revenue and thus their bottom line. And at the end of the day, I mean, both of these brands are still very young, and by a lot of respects, they're both still nascent concepts. So the growth is still abundant.
Well, I think the one thing that, for the people who are thinking, oh my gosh, I just don't know what this looks like. It's great that now if you have somebody who has a Wallaby and maybe the installation isn't exactly what they want. Now they've got, 9 other brands that they could choose from that will all be in the Empower brand, and they can build their own little investment package, right? Which I think is really cool. I mean, a lot of people get into franchising and they own one, and then like Jerry, he's got the Great Clips, and then he's sought out yet another industry with the Joint Chiropractic. And that's what I think are really cool with some of these umbrella companies.
Absolutely. And another thing that you mentioned too earlier, Laura, about, franchise agreements and, okay, we've had this change now. What does that mean for me as a franchisee? I've probably at every single, we call it confirmation day, but a lot of people refer to it as discovery day. Mm-hmm. At almost every one of those events, I always get the question from multiple people, what does your exit strategy look like? When is that going to happen? And I am very open, very forthright. And I say, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And you need to understand that this agreement is this agreement. You need to be comfortable with it, whether I'm on the other side of it or someone else. And if you're not, then you probably ought not sign it.
Right. And that's a big thing that we talk about when I work with clients that are, buying a new franchise. When we do the review of the FDD is, you may feel very comfortable, if you brought up a question to one of the representatives, someone like you or a salesperson, whatever, and they said, oh, that's in there, but we never do that, or, whatever. And I usually say to them, I'm like, that just means they're not doing it now.
Yeah.
If it's in there, you do know that, they allowed it to be in there, right? I write FDDs as well as, review them for clients, for franchisees. And, everything is in there for a reason.
Absolutely.
Well, I really hope that this works out really well for you. I'm glad to hear that everybody so far having you at the helm with the rest of the Empower group is fantastic news. And I think you'll really be able to support the culture that, really, you're a true entrepreneur, right? You started these companies, and I love how you said it's like you gave birth to them, because that's what people who buy into your brand want to hear. Is that you're just that committed. So congratulations to you, really. I'm so excited. And I know with the entrepreneurial spirit you have, there's probably another brand that you're ready to build in your head.
That's why he's incubating.
That's it.
He's got little chicks under the light.
Yeah. We're very excited to have you on today. And I can't wait to have you back and see how this journey goes for you. And super excited, Scott. Thank you so much for coming and talking with us again today.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
Hey, franchise owners. How's your local marketing? Do you feel like you could use some help keeping up with your social media posts and comments and reviews? Do you wonder if you could be doing more to attract local customers? Are you able to identify new move-ins to your local area? At Westvine, we help franchisees like you reach more local customers through digital marketing. With daily monitoring, creative content, and ad placement, and customer data intelligence, we'll get your business in front of the people who want your products or services. We also work with franchisors who need an agency to handle the digital marketing for all of their locations. If you're ready to reach more local customers, give us a call at 805-265-5440 or visit us at westvine.com. That's 805-265-5440 or westvine.com.
Welcome back. It looks like Jerry must be at the lake.
Jerry is at the lake, and it was golf day in kindergarten today. So you get me dressed like this.
You know what? It's the life of a franchisee.
It is. It is. You work. I was just working while I was waiting to come on. And you work when you have to, and you get your stuff done, and you can still come and go as you please.
That's awesome. It's so great. And, that's the one thing that a lot of people look for, right, in franchising, is they want that balance. So congratulations that you found it, Jerry.
Yeah, it's great. And I wanted to add, isn't Scott a great interview? Man, what a great person to have in the leadership position in a franchisor, because as a franchisee or a prospective franchisee, he just exudes confidence, and he's so informative and straightforward. There's no hidden agendas. We need more of that in franchising, don't we?
Yeah, we sure do. It's funny because we actually had this very similar conversation about him after the last show, and what a great leader he seemed to be. So I'm really excited. I think, I'm not sure who's going to make out better, Empower Brands having him or him having Empower Brands.
Yeah. I think probably they're both going to do quite well. I think it's a kind of a match made in heaven. So best of luck to both sides. Yeah. And that kind of leads into the subject for today, right? Is culture between franchisees and franchisors. Absolutely. Because I deal and help sort out so many negative situations between franchisors and franchisees. And in almost every case, it's communication and some performance issues that were maybe not explained or covered correctly or something like that. And it's unnecessary. So, finding if you're a prospective franchisee, finding a franchisor that you're comfortable with the culture when you're in discovery day and you're doing your validation calls, make sure that you're covering what that culture feels like, because that's your future. That's the area you're going to live in for the next X number of years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point. And, kind of even back to what Sarah had asked, is when you're in that process of looking, what are some of the ways that you can identify that? And, I don't know about you, but not only do I find the conversations to be telling, but like you said, when they do their discovery day, or I think he said
Confirmation day.
confirmation. So in my head, I heard confession.
Well, maybe.
I'm like, I don't think that's right. But when they go do their discovery day, I mean, then you get the overall being, right? You can hear them, you can see them. Are they looking you in the eye? Are they warm and welcoming? And I mean, that particular step in the process really should seal the deal for you. By the time
I agree.
by the time you get to discovery day, all your paperwork should be in order. Your business plan has been written. All your projections have been done. And then you're just making sure that you're ready to be married.
Yeah. And really, you've got two very good tools to figure out what culture is like with validation calls and discovery day, because in validation calls, I coach people to ask really tough questions. Ask about the worst day that franchisee has ever had dealing with people from the franchisor, because you want to hear those stories, because you might have a day like that in your future.
Oh.
So you ask about those things. You ask them to explain how it was resolved, and if they were happy with how it came out, or if nothing else, if they understood why it went that way. So you've got that side. And then when you're in those discovery days, as you pointed out, being able to sit in front of those vice presidents of real estate and marketing and whatever it might happen to be, listen to their presentation, read their body language, and by the way, have a prepared list of tough questions for their category, because frankly, between us, I want to push their buttons. I'm not going to be mean, but I want them to walk away thinking, man, that guy asked tough questions. He made me dance a little bit around, and he really dug in, because I'm going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars with this brand. I want to know what that culture is going to be like moving forward, because when I run into trouble as a franchisee, I want to know who to reach out to, what kind of a relationship we're going to have, how they're going to solve the problem. Are they going to be supportive of me? Those kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, I think when a franchisor is thinking about how they're going to build a culture and how they're going to support their franchisees or franchise partners, it's really important that when they place, some people call them franchise business coaches, some of them call them field support, whoever those people from the franchisor are, they're going to go out to the field, to the various locations, and work one-on-one. Like you said, you've had the worst day you've ever had. Well, not only should your hopefully franchise neighbors help you, but there should also be somebody that backs you at the franchisor that says, hey, listen, don't worry. We've had a 3-car pileup before. I mean, I remember my first week, my office person drove one new car into 2 of my other new cars and took off all of the side view mirrors. I mean, things like that are going to happen, right? And so if you have someone to plug into and say, oh my God, I feel like the sky is falling, it really does help. So what other things do you think are important to think about, Jerry, for a franchisee, franchisor, having that same culture?
Well, I think what you just pointed out is one of the biggest things. And, knowing who to talk to about specific issues that you run into as a franchisee, and who might be responsible at the corporate level, and what that person is like. Because first off, when I talk to prospective franchisees or franchisees who are in a situation where they need an answer from corporate, and they say, I don't know who to talk to at corporate about this, we got a problem. Yes. Because if they've done their due diligence through the validation calls and discovery day, they should have a pretty good idea about who to start with on that specific subject. So understanding who the players are, understanding, how you're going to get answers, understanding, and I'll just be blunt about it. Are they going to treat you with respect, or like you're, the first idiot that walked in off of the plane and put down a few $100,000? Because if you don't have a culture, a help supportive type culture from the franchisor level, you're going to run into problems. But we also have to remember this is a two-way street. So many franchisees believe that the franchisor is their go-to for everything in the world, and they lose track of the fact they're running their own business.
Right.
Many of the results they get, both positive and negative, are more reflective of their efforts and their organization than the franchisors. So when we talk about culture between a franchisee and a franchisor, It's the two of them working together to build that culture. And frankly, every franchisee is going to have a slightly different relationship with their franchisor.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good point. And I think sometimes, well, there's 2 points that you made. And one, I would say, for Scott and his team, as you continue to grow and you bring on other resources from Empower, my brand is a great example of how we got big. And now there are things I go, I don't even know how to get a hold of that person. And I've got 8 systems to go in to find out whether it's my statistics or it's marketing. I don't know where I'm going for what. And so I think as brands grow and you become part of a bigger group, it's really important, that communication. So hopefully that goes really well with them. And I'm sure that it will, because he's going to be so involved in it. But yeah, Jerry, I think you bring up a really great point.
I don't frankly see Scott allowing that to happen in his organization, because he knows what that's like. And I think it's critical, again, as you said, when an organization is growing, that they introduce new members of their team to the franchisee community, that they explain what their role is. Frankly, when I get an email like that, I want to know if I should call this person or the old person that I used to talk to, if they're still there. And frankly, when you own more than one brand, or even if you just work with franchisees in multiple brands, you kind of become, the worst horror story for some of those franchisor representatives, because my people hate it when I say, a VP of real estate, my other brand does it this way, and it's way more, user friendly. It's a better system. You may want to think about researching it and seeing what you can do to adjust, because your system is not what I expect it to be. And frankly, I pay your bills, so I need a little help understanding why we're in this situation.
Right, exactly. And I think that's good. And, that's a unique advantage to having multiple brands, is that you can use them in that way. The flip side is, if you're under the same umbrella with 2 brands, you know exactly what you're going to get.
Absolutely. And you many times have somebody up the corporate ladder in those 2 or 3 brands who, if you fail everywhere else, you can text or email them and say, I'm struggling. Who should I talk to? Can you connect me? Whatever the situation is. Excellent. Jerry, thank you so much on your perspective of how franchisees and franchisor culture is so important in franchising. Franchise. Absolutely, Kristin. It's been a pleasure. Everybody have a great week. You too. We'll talk to you next week, Jerry. What are the top 3 reasons that you should tune in to Pillars of Franchising? 1, franchise advice from a Million Dollar mentoring team. And 2, how about interviews from franchise professionals and influencers? And number 3, how about getting some professional tips on buying, growing, and exiting your franchise? Join us on Pillars of Franchising to learn about the secrets of franchising success. You can find us at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, wherever you listen to your podcast. Hey, Karen.
Hello. Wow, lots of talk about culture.
Yeah, that's like one of your favorite things.
My favorite topic. Yeah.
Well, we've got Sarah and Jerry on there, but I'm sure Fred will get that fixed right away. So let's talk a little bit about it. What's your take on all this stuff? How does culture come right down to the bottom line in your opinion?
I was thinking a lot about that, because, we had a lot of examples. I loved all the examples that Scott and Jerry talked about. Mm-hmm. And still, even in talking about all these different examples, there's some people, I wouldn't call it that they're not believers, but a lot of times people that are very bottom line people, they're like, okay, well, what does this really mean financially? You can talk about all that stuff, but what does it mean financially? And it's really about strong culture can truly have a significant impact on a franchise, on their profitability, on their growth. Sure. And I think getting people to see some of the key areas of how it impacts franchise to franchise. You've got to take a look at the franchisor to franchisee. And even as a franchisee, how am I actually building my franchise as well, and some key things to focus on.
Sure. So tell me, what are some of those things then, if you were advising a franchisor of how to do that and tie the culture back to the bottom line.
Right. So there are 3 different key areas that I take a look at. And I'm sure there are more than that, but here are kind of 3 top ones. First of all, we've talked a lot about it. It's about our talent. It's about our employees, right? It's about the people side. And strong cultures actually can help attract the right people. And it's like a magnet, right?
Yes.
If you've got that strong, where you can get people that really align to your vision, to your goals. And it could, so then what happens is when you've got that purpose and the values, and you get these great people that are they're attracted to you, and they're attracted to that vision, that's going to have, if you think about it, it's going to be an easier way where you can hire people. You're also going to be able to keep people. And so then it's going to reduce the turnover. All of that's directly tied to bottom line.
Excellent. I'm taking notes.
Okay. So the second one is, I call it enhanced customer experience. And again, we were talking a lot about that. If you think about franchisee experience,
sure.
You could even say as a franchisee to your customers.
Yeah,
so it's really focusing a strong culture actually emphasizes customer centric.
Yeah.
Gary alluded a lot to that, where it's, how can you be customer centric? How do you embody values? How do you respond to people? How do you even respond to each other? What does that customer service look like? And even like what you're saying about customers.
Oh yeah.
How you're treating them, how you're, I think that's that whole experience, that loyalty, it breeds loyalty then, right?
Yeah,
so if you think about it, breeds loyalty of our customers. You're going to have more repeat customers. So you're not going to spend as much money on continue to get more and more and more customers. You're going to do that, but you're also going to have the repeat customers as well.
Sure.
So you're going to see an increase in your sales and your revenue, because if you think about it, word's going to get out. It's how you treat other people. You always think about your Google reviews, right? People look at that now. So the more you have that, the more then you're going to see that increase in your sales and your revenue.
So you're talking directly about driving sales and the cost per acquisition per customer.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's something that's very controllable, right? It's about having the right message, the right marketing, and really the right culture drives a lot of what that message is.
Absolutely. And even, you talk about the message, and even when someone, if you're, no matter what it is, when you're dealing with customers, how are you treating them? Right? How are you dealing with them? All that it trickles down.
Sure. Well, as simple as how you answer the phone, right? When someone answers the phone, does it sound like you're interrupting them?
Right.
Or is it like a welcome mat? Hey, it's totally different how your customer reacts and feels about the experience based on something so simple.
Well, it's funny because Jerry was talking about, so a lot of his examples were even dealing with conflict.
Yeah.
Right. And if you think about it, sometimes you can win over customers when there's been a conflict situation.
Yes.
And so it's how you deal with that, and what's that story of how you overcame that, and then they're customers for life.
And don't you find, one thing I find that's interesting, and Jerry brought this up about what are the things that you go to your franchisor for, and what are the things that you go, outside, maybe to your lawyer, to your accountant. The one thing that I would say, I think more franchisors need to work on maybe is some of the soft skills that if you're in a corporate situation, you would have HR training, right?
Yes.
As a franchise owner and as small business, there isn't a lot of stuff out there that says, you think about the different conflicts you're going to have. Well, all of the franchisees of the same brand may indeed have the same type of conflicts, the same type of challenges. So why not come up with some objections and how to overcome them?
Agree.
So, and I think camaraderie really, as you're talking about this, right? We know it drives sales. We know it drives down the cost per customer for acquisition, but creating that sense of camaraderie within the brand seems like that would also really help the communication.
Absolutely.
Did we hit your third point?
I did not. And the third one, it's a little unusual because, the ones you're like, okay, customers, your employees. The third one is actually having a strong culture actually can result in cost savings. Okay.
Think
about that, Because
Let's
if you
talk about
have a strong culture, sometimes employees, not all the time, but sometimes employees will make sure they're making the right decisions. It's not like screw the company, but
Yes.
it's like, I want to make the right decisions. I want to do the right things. There's more of a willingness to do that.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about that, how that can impact, customers, it can impact even showing up, absenteeism, right? Because if they're like, no, I care. I don't want to just call in sick.
Yes.
So they're much more connected. It also, you can see a decrease in healthcare costs because they're happier, they're connected in. So that is a result of having a positive culture and relating to cost savings.
I think those are all very good points. They're all very doable. I don't think anybody couldn't deliver on those things. And it's funny because when we have this stuff, it's always about communication. All of the things kind of center around that, right? I mean, so much of it could be solved in just simple communication, but people just don't know how to do it.
They do not. That's why I'm in business. Forever and ever, right? It's the ever-ending communication.
Well, thank you, Karen, so much. I'm so glad you were able to give us some things that would really help. And again, driving the bottom line, we always want to do that. And anything that can get tied back, simple tasks, simple things that you can do to really affect your bottom line. That's what we're trying to tie all this stuff to. So, it's not just a warm and fuzzy thing. It's really about making a difference for you, your employees, and the bottom line. So Karen, thank you so much. We'll look forward to seeing and hearing from you again next week. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend.
You too. Thanks.
50 graduates resulting in 7 new franchisees owning 8 franchise brands, more than a dozen skilled graduates who are employees of franchise companies, all of them having earned a concentration in franchising exclusively granted by the Titus Center at Palm Beach Atlantic University, plus more than 80 franchise professionals on our advisory board. The Titus Center for Franchising is on fire in West Palm Beach, Florida. What do you need to join us? My students want to hear from you. They may even want to buy your franchise or work for your company. TitusCenter.com.
And I'm so glad we got to sneak in that video of Dr. John Hayes down at the Titus Center for Franchising. As you know, they're a great partner of ours. And today we'd like to thank all of you for joining us on the show. As always, thank you to Scott Marr with Empower Brands. So excited to see that Wallaby Windows and Koala Insulation have joined yet a bigger team of great entrepreneurial people to really drive that brand. We appreciate our $1 Million mentors, Jerry Akers, Andrea Mundy, Ray Pillar, Karen Kimsey-Sward, for their continued commitment and insights. Thank you to Laura Liss, our franchise lawyer. And last but not least, a shout of thanks to our producer, Fred McMurray. I am Kristin Selmeczy, your 4th franchising mentor. Excuse me, I don't think I ever get through this. And together, we are your resource for franchising success. Join us again next week at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, wherever you get your podcast. And remember, the dream starts here. Have a great week.